Hello, everybody, and welcome to Maximum Libertarian. I am Brian, and today we're going to have an interview with Mr. Larry Newman. Larry Newman, he currently serves as the president of the Missouri Alliance of Professional Bail Bond Agents, a trade organization that promotes ethics, standards of conduct, and education for individuals involved in the business of bail bonds in Missouri. It's very interesting hearing about some of the reforms that people are trying to do when it comes to the cash bail reforms and some of the missteps, like normal, when people in our government, they rush to do something just because there's an uproar, and then in turn they immediately have to start backtracking and trying to correct the situation. He talks about that, and he talks about a couple other little things I think you're going to enjoy. So if you haven't already, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe to it on that podcast platform. If it's iTunes, if it's Google Play, it might even be Podbean. Who knows? But if you can, please subscribe to wherever your our podcast is. And then rate us. Give us 5 stars, obviously. Please ask that. And if you don't mind, you can run over to YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey and find us at Maximum Libertarian. That's where we have videos about 4 times a week there. And then everything that we talk about is on our Twitter account and our Getter account, which is at We Are Max Lib. Okay, so now I'm done with that. Sit back, grab your glass of water, your hot tea, your cup of coffee, maybe an adult beverage, and listen to the soothing sounds of my voice talking with Mr. Larry Newman. Enjoy. All right, welcome, Mr. Newman. Let's go. We will. You are a former Jasper County Sheriff's Office deputy and detective, as well as a first responder, volunteer firefighter, police officer, probation, and parole volunteer. And you're currently the president of the Missouri Alliance of Professional Bail Bonds Agents, and has worked closely with lawmakers and other individuals on bail matters. So you've got a lot going on here, and so what brought you into this line of work, and then if you can go into what made you want to get vocal, because I got the email saying that you were interested in speaking to as many people as possible about topics.
Yes, well, I've been in law enforcement since 2002. I was an insurance agent before that, but I had a friend of mine who was a police officer, just kept after me until I finally broke down and went to work as a police officer. In 2009, I left the sheriff's office and I started doing bail bonds, and not knowing at the time just how closely associated that the bail bondsman was with law enforcement, providing accountability to the court system. And so for the last 10 years, we've been in the bail bond business, or 13 years, I guess. And so I've always been involved in I saw the need for lawmakers, especially, to understand what's going on in the criminal justice system and understand why that we're having all the problems we're having right now with the increase of crime.
Okay. And I saw in the email that you had talked about, there was one incident, and I think in 2019, where an individual was arrested. He got out, and then he put body fluids on another person. Correct?
That's what I understand. That happened in New York on the subway. Yes.
Okay. And now, how long has this been? Has it been a brewing thing with people wanting bail reform? I know once the 90s happened, well, not the 90s, excuse me, 2020, it was, you had a whole bunch of riots going off in the streets and all that good stuff. How long has this been brewing with bail reform? Has it been something that's always been brewing, or?
Well, there's always been the ultra liberals out there that wanted to consider the criminals as a poor, misunderstood individual,
Mhm.
but really goes back to the person that said that they wanted to fundamentally change America. Um, that was about 12 to 14 years ago. So there's been a push in the last 12 to 14 years to make the victim the real criminal and the criminal is the victim, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Uh, we've turned our back on the victim of crime. We've taken the statutes that were written by our legislator and we've thrown them out the window because people that commit crimes now are supposed to be pitied and they're supposed to be turned loose, let go. They're misunderstood. And basically, what we've done is we've just opened the door for them to commit more crime.
Correct. So, well, violent crimes are on the rise across the country. I mean, I know from New York to where you're at. Are you still in Missouri, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. And then with the violent crime on the rise, our leaders from federal to state levels, they're wanting to make all these fundamental changes, and they're tripping over themselves a lot of times to make changes that don't make sense because then they have to go back and reverse the policies that they just put in.
Right.
One of the things you had wrote an editorial for the Springfield News Leader. It said the new rules restrict judges' ability to use discretion in setting bail, leading to defendants reoffending pending their trials, including for crimes such as assault, gun charges, and even murder. When Missourians continue to lose faith in our criminal justice system, it is time for the Supreme Court to admit that it's the architect of the failure of the experiment. Bail reform may be laudable gold, but it must be implemented with wisdom. And that makes a lot of sense because a lot of times they do a lot of things for good intentions, and then of course it don't work out that way. I did not know that they were trying to put handcuffs on judges in setting bail. Uh, is that similar to like doing the mandatory minimum sentencing?
Well, no, we're talking about a pretrial release here when we're talking about bail. Uh, the pretrial release is where, if you're charged with a crime, you have the constitutional right to get out of jail on bond pending your court case. So that's what we're talking about. Well, Missouri Supreme Court judges put out new rules to the local judges saying that you must release these people with no bail. You must release them ROR. You must release them because they're poor. And it doesn't matter what you as a judge think or know about these people that are in your area. Uh, we're telling you that you've got to be nice to the criminals. And the judges that I've talked to in my area, they don't like it. They know that they're hurting the community, but they don't have a choice because the rules come down from the Missouri Supreme Court.
Right. What are lawmakers trying to do anything to change that in your area, or to your knowledge, or is it just something that a court's gotta live with right now?
Well, that depends. If you want to talk about what they say they want to change it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, when they go into session, they don't do anything about it. It's they can't agree on anything. Uh, Criminal justice reform done right, we need, but criminal justice reform as it is set up now as the flash words, if you want to call it that, is all about eliminating the penalties for crime, and so we're making it easier on the people that commit crime.
Right. Is there anything in particular, like right now, if you were able to sign something, get something put into law, that you could make a change, what would that one thing that we should be focusing on being?
We need to, in Missouri, we need to make a law that repeals the Missouri Supreme Court rule changes and go back to letting the judges have discretion over what they're doing in their own precincts, in their own areas. The other thing is the Department of Corrections has a big hand in this. Probation and parole, which is a division of the Department of Corrections. Anytime someone pleads guilty to a crime, then the Department of Correction does an assessment on sentencing, and so then they look at this defendant very half-heartedly and go back in front of the judge and recommend to the judge that either the person goes to prison or they go on probation, which most people don't know what probation is. When you're given probation, that means that tomorrow you're walking on the street again.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you just beat somebody half to death and you go in front of the judge and you plead guilty, and the judge says, okay, I'm sentencing you to 5 years in prison, but instead I'm going to put you on probation for the next 5 years. Promise not to do it again. The next day, that person's out of jail walking the streets. So that's a major part of this, probably one of the top areas that need to be worked on.
Right. Okay. You had another editorial your friend sent me. It said it was about the criminal justice system, how it's broken, and how Democrats have destroyed. It was very good. And I liked how you talked about how the problems were starting with the prisons, and then it moves to the local jails, and then you had COVID, and then probation. You spoke about charitable funds, bail funds. And let's see, in it said charitable bail funds, privately financed through donations, also have become popular as of late. Designed to work around the bail system and its built-in system of accountability, they get defendants released with zero accountability to the courts. I know our current vice president, when she was running, Kamala Harris, she was supporting raising funds to get people taken out on bail. Can you go more into detail about charitable bail funding, and just like if I was to go to jail and had to do a get myself bailed out?
Well, the charitable bail funds came about a few years ago when the large amount of riots was going on, where people were destroying property, setting fire to property, committing all kinds of crimes, and they would get arrested and taken to jail. Well, the people that were back in the riots, they wanted those people back out of jail. So we created these bail funds, financed through liberal politicians and the Hollywood groups. They donated money. So as soon as one of the rioters went to jail, they could run right down there and post that bail, and that rioter would be back out. So that's where it came from. That's where the start of it was. So then it grew to be anybody committing a crime they're not really a criminal. They're only doing it because they're hungry or they're broke or whatever, which we all know is totally false. But that's where that bail fund started. Now there's a investigation going on in California over one of the bail funds, about several $1 million missing, from the bail fund, but they don't know where it went. In Missouri, the bail funds, for the most part, have left the state because there's a statute in Missouri that says that whoever posts the bond, regardless of who posts the bond for an individual, that the refund of that bond goes to the individual. So in that instance, where you would have the bail fund putting up money for somebody to get out, if they go to court and the case is either dropped or they plead guilty and the refund of that bond money is paid, it was to go to the defendant. So the bail fund wasn't getting any of their money back. So they shut down in Missouri.
Okay. Let's go into, I was just looking up, trying to see what it said here, some alternatives to cash bail reforms. What I'm going to do is I got this list. This was from m4bl.org. It's movementforblacklives's.org. And it gives like some of their demands. And if you can, what I'm going to do is I'll just say what it says is like one is they had three demands. One was end money bail and pre-trial detention. If you can just go over, I'll read the three off. If you could just tell me why maybe it wouldn't be a good idea in the aspect of, because I know when it was really hot back in 2020, one of the things that I saw was like, hey, end the prison system. And it makes no sense to me because it's like, well, where do the bad guys go? And no one would give me an answer. So if I say like end money bail and pre-trial detention, what would you say to that?
Well, okay, you just scrapped all of your criminal statutes.
Okay.
Okay. You have taken any effort by the police and thrown that out the window. You eliminate any accountability to guarantee the appearance of that person in court to stand up for the charges against them. And that's really what bail does. The surety bail industry is the only accountable method of pretrial release, because when they are released on a surety bail, such as what I do, and they don't show up for court, then I've got the legal authority to pursue them anywhere in the United States and take them into custody and bring them back. We get justice for the victim. So that's what pretrial release should be. Every person, according to the Missouri Constitution, every person has the right to a release by surety bail, by sufficient surety. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it was set up in this country from the beginning. It's been tried every other way, but we're the only method of securing the fact that that person is going to show up for court and stand in front of their victim and be accountable.
Right. Okay. One of the other demands was eliminate risk assessments. What would you say? What would you say against that?
So that's about as outrageous as anything I've heard. A risk assessment, the only way that civilization can exist is if we have rules, and if those rules are obeyed. And by the very nature of the human being, unless there is pain for bad behavior, you have no civilization. You have no society. You have nothing. To eliminate a risk assessment would be, it just, I I'm almost at a loss for words on that. That's about as crazy. Basically, what you're saying is it doesn't matter what kind of crime that they do, they can murder somebody, and as soon as they're arrested, they have to be released with a promise to show up for court.
Right. Now,
That's crazy.
Is risk assessments where they just do they do like assess like the crime, the mental well-being of the individual, and all is that, I assume, what a risk assessment is?
Well, a risk assessment is first. Let me explain what the courts do. The courts ask a defendant a series of questions. Now, this is the defendant who just robbed a store, just beat somebody into drugs, whatever. The risk assessment is a list of 10 questions that they ask the defendant, and they have to assume that the defendant is going to be truthful on all of them. That's a court risk assessment. Okay. Now, a risk assessment that I do before I provide the opportunity for a defendant to be released from jail, the risk assessment that I do is I talk to mom, dad, brother, sister, grandma, grandpa, employer. I talk to everybody to find out what the risk to the community, to an individual, or the flight risk is. Now, that's the risk assessment that I provide. Risk assessment from the courts, you're asking a career criminal to tell you the truth. That's not going to happen.
Right. Okay. And then the final demand that they had was eliminate criminal punishment, fees, and fines. What would be your argument against that?
Okay. Well, let's say your 3-year-old walks in to a hot kitchen stove and sticks their hand on the burner and there's no pain.
Right.
Are they going to do it again?
Yes.
Okay. So when you eliminate any pain in the criminal justice system for bad behavior, what are they going to do?
They'll just do it again.
Exactly. So fines are supposed to be, they were set up to be painful, substantially painful, to inhibit people from, again, breaking that law. So everything that you're telling me that they want to do is the three things that will destroy civilization, because there's no longer any reason for people not to murder, kill, destroy, take everything you've got. There's just nothing there. So the three things that they want to do just eliminates our civilization and society and being able to live together.
Right. Okay. So let's say someone wants to run for office. What would you tell them right now if you could get into a candidate's ear and say, this is an idea that I would push? I know in Missouri you talked about removing it or going back for the Supreme Court or for the state Supreme Court. Is there anything on a federal level that would bleed down here to Roanoke, Virginia, that you would say, you know what, if I was on city council, be on the lookout to try to do this, to make sure, because like you said, them three things right there would destroy the community. It's happening right now because we have so much violence going on. We have a lot of gun violence, and it's not being addressed really, except, hey, let's take away the guns, but that's not really handling the situation, you know. So what would you tell? Do you have anything like you would tell, like, if I ran for city council, like, hey, you got to try to have this as one of your platforms?
be hard stance on criminal justice. I would tell them to take the stand that you are going to go out there and you are going to implement rules and policies that impart pain and that hold accountable those people that commit crimes and make the punishment sufficient, adequately sufficient to stop them from doing those crimes again, whatever that should be. Of course, different crimes are different, different penalties, but that I would run on crime and not criminal justice reform, because criminal justice reform means going easier. The communities, your community, my community, every community in the United States right now is crying for someone to take a stiffer hand with criminal justice. They're wanting the crime to stop because it's escalating out of control.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of people that live in your community and my community understand that, and they want something done.
Right.
Politicians, the elites live in their own world, and they have no idea what the real world is out here. So if I was going to run, or if I was advising someone to run on criminal justice, run on the fact that you're going to get tough on crime, tough on crime. That people want that.
Sounds good. All right, I have two more questions for you. All right, the first one is, we're, like I said, we're seeing so much stuff that's hammering law enforcement. If it's defund the police, if you're having social media, just take a video and they'll cut the first, half a minute out, and it changes the video completely. And my question is, one thing that I worry about is, how are we going to get good applicants for these different law enforcement agencies? Because otherwise, because it's being hammered so bad, we're having trouble getting people to sign up to be a police officer here in my area. This is also bleeding over into the military, because you were being told how bad the country is and things of that nature. So in terms of being taught this stuff, what is there any? Do you know of, like, the people that do you know of things that they're doing to trying to get the best recruits now, or what's going on there? Do you know? And I know that's a weird question. It might be a hard question to answer.
No, it's not a hard question. It's a hard situation because law enforcement's having a difficult time recruiting right now, because it always has been one of the lower paid jobs that is the highest risk, and the first time that you can go out there and do and protect your community, and the first time you stub your toe or something happens to you, you get shot at, whatever, you've got to go find another career. The risk in making this a career is tremendous for the pay. So you're not going to find anybody out there in a uniform and wearing a badge that's doing it for the money or doing it for any other reason than they're there to help the community, because you've eliminated everything else. I know it's hard. We just had here in Joplin, Missouri, a couple of weeks ago, we had a defendant out on probation shot 3 Joplin police officers. 2 of them died. Joplin's having a hard time finding replacements. They're already shorthanded. So the police are doing a good job. One of the things that would help, if each community could elect a good prosecutor in their community, then the police would have the incentive to come back and do what they need to do. These bad actor prosecutors that's been elected, the George Soros prosecutors, they're the ones that's been attacking the police officers. But if you get prosecutors that'll take the cases and back the police, you'll see a major change.
Okay. And then I guess the final question is, do you have any final words, and where can people, if they want to talk to you or get more information about you, do you have a website or anything that you would like to lead them to?
Well, our website is aaawaybellbonds.com. And they can go there and ask questions and stuff. I'm a bail bond agent, but with my background in law enforcement and everything else, gives me the unique opportunity to talk about these things with people, and I'm glad to. But that would be the location to go, aaawaybellbonds.com, and send me an email.
Okay.
But I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to come back in June or July, and you'll actually speak to the Roanoke Valley Libertarians. And, I think this is an issue that people need to be made aware of, and it's getting pushed under. We have other things happen. They flashed a light, and we're looking over there, and the real issues that's happening take place. That really affect our lives.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll see you shortly.
Gotcha questions are never a bad a problem.
Okay. All right. Thank you later. Well, thank you once again to Mr. Larry Newman for coming on and talking on the podcast about cash bail reform, giving us some ideas that we should do to fix the situation that we're in and to make it a stronger system. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform that you're listening to. Rate us 5 stars if you don't mind. I'd greatly appreciate it. And then you can go over to either YouTube, Odyssey, or Rumble. Follow us and subscribe to us there at Maximum Libertarian. And all the news topics that we talk about, you can find on Getter and Twitter at WeAreMaxLib. So until next time, my friends, see you later.